Heading into the 94th Academy Awards on March 27, 2022, the common consensus among most movie pundits was that this would probably be the most predictable Oscars in recent memory. Other than a late-stage surge for Coda, which had many wondering if the eventual Best Picture winner actually would be able to knock out early frontrunner The Power of the Dog, the results of most of the awards were largely considered to be a lock before the show even began. Leading up to the evening, the only truly controversial aspect of the show was a series of decisions made by the Academy and show producers to allegedly speed up the telecast and appeal to a broader audience, due to concerns the Oscars were no longer as buzzed about and newsworthy as they used to be. That mentality would become unexpectedly ironic hours into the event, when the shocking actions of one of the nominated actors instantly turned the 94th Academy Awards into not only the most infamous Oscars telecast ever, but arguably one of the most surprising moments in all of entertainment news history. Of course, throughout its long history, the Academy Awards have been no stranger to startling, newsworthy, or controversial moments. In 1973, an irate John Wayne had to be held back and prevented from storming the stage and confronting Native American activist Sacheen Littlefeather, who Marlon Brando had sent to the show to accept his Best Actor trophy for The Godfather, so that she could make a speech addressing both the siege at Wounded Knee and Hollywood's stereotypical portrayal of Native American characters throughout the decades. 1 year later, in 1974, a naked man ran across the stage during the telecast, which was memorable enough, but made even more iconic when host David Niven, who had been on stage at the moment, came up with a quick improvised line about the streaker stripping off his clothes and, quote, showing off his shortcomings. But it's hard to argue that, pre-March 2022, the most infamous moment in Oscar history was in 2017, when presenters Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty were mistakenly handed the wrong card before presenting Best Picture, and therefore erroneously announced La La Land as the winner, despite Moonlight being the true victor. The mistake was announced and corrected on stage moments later, leading to a very awkward moment for all involved. And for a time, it sure seemed as if there would never again be another moment as unexpected or uncomfortable as that at an Oscars telecast. But that all changed at the 94th Academy Awards, when a nominee took to the stage not to accept an award, but instead to physically assault and then loudly berate Chris Rock, who in his role as a presenter had made a joke the nominee took umbrage with. Obviously, a famous actor striking a famous comedian live on camera at Hollywood's biggest night would always have been a newsworthy event. But what made this especially mind-blowing was not only how big of a star this individual was, and make no mistake, he's one of the biggest, and not only the fact that he was heavily predicted to, and in fact would win Best Actor only minutes later, but also that this individual had long meticulously developed and cultivated a popular and likable on-screen and public persona that seemed the very opposite of someone who would indulge in such behavior. To put it bluntly, nobody expected to see this from Will Smith. That said, there have been moments over the years when Smith has allowed at least a sliver of darkness and/or edge into his otherwise overwhelmingly wholesome on-screen image. Whether it be the bombastic on-screen R-rated excess of a film like Bad Boys 2, portraying an anti-hero in David Ayer's Suicide Squad, or even playing Lucifer himself in Winter's Tale, there are certainly indications that Smith occasionally wants to cut a little loose and go a little more extreme than he is usually known for. One of the most notable examples of this would ultimately stand out not only as a unique entry in his filmography, but a somewhat fascinating historical relic in the story of superhero cinema and its dominance on American box office in the 21st century. The year is 2008, and in the same summer that Iron Man and The Dark Knight are revolutionizing superhero cinema forever, Columbia and Sony Pictures Entertainment are getting ready to show a new, edgier side of one of America's most beloved stars, and in the process launch a brand new superhero franchise with Hancock. Welcome once again to Failure to Franchise, the show dedicated to some of Hollywood's most infamous mistakes, missteps, and misfires. This is Trev, and over there is Chris.
Keep my name out your f***ing mouth.
Dude, it was a podcast intro.
I said keep my name out your f***ing mouth.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
I will.
Okay, can I do my part now, please?
Please.
All right. And I'm Chris, excited to talk all things cold cock. I mean hand slap. No, Hancock. Jesus. Sorry, listeners. I'm just not myself today, and you know as well as I do that the devil always comes for you when you're at your highest.
Oh man, I'm sure you got a bunch of those to come, and yeah, I guess I'm as excited as someone can be who's heard so many of these jokes for the past week or so, you know.
Yeah.
But obviously, I think you and I are very, very excited to record this episode because it's not very often the podcast gods smile down on us and something so relevant falls into our lap. Mm-hmm. But people might think, I'm sure some listeners are thinking, wow, they really rushed this episode so that they can address this, right? But no, actually, Chris, do you want to tell them a little bit about what we have always had planned for this month? Because I know you also love our theme months and you love talking to the listeners about our theme months. So why don't you give the listeners a little background as to why we're covering today's movie?
Of course. So we always like doing theme months, and actually back in December of 2021, me and Trev kind of planned out the entire year of what we're going to be talking about. And when it came to April, we thought we'd call it April Showers Brings April Powers. And we were going to talk about some superhero movies. So one is this one today, Hancock from 2008, and the next one is Sky High from 2005, I believe. Yeah, so we just love our themes, and you know how I love The Matrix as well. Not just the movie, but the idea that we're living in a simulation. And like you said, it just came together all too well for this. Literally, we're recording, I think, just a week after the incident that we will get into depth about. But it's just amazing. It's just amazing.
As it's, of course, now known in common parlance, the incident. That's all you have to say.
Exactly. In 45 years from now, when they're listening to this podcast, and we're dead and gone due to the water wars of 2047.
Which the incident sparked, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It is really weird how originally the whole idea for April Showers Brings April Powers was we were like, well, let's just talk about two superhero movies that have nothing to do with comic book source material, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was like the whole theme. And like we didn't think anything more of it. And in fact, I think, I don't know about you, I was much more excited about the next film. I was like, well, that's the one that's going to be really fun to talk about because this one is just kind of like, it just seemed to me like maybe like a little bit of a nothing burger blockbuster.
Sure.
To discuss, you know, but then to have, I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe... I don't want to make light of, yes, we do. Actually, we do kind of want to make light of such a stupid thing. But
yeah.
But the moment that happened, I think, what was it, like maybe 5 minutes later, I texted you and said, Chris, our Hancock episode just got a lot more interesting. Yeah, I was actually watching. I was watching the Oscars. I know you were not until that moment.
Yeah.
And like many others, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. And then, of course, I had to make sure everyone else knew about it. And then, of course, everyone in the world tuned in. But look, we'll get there. Don't worry. We're going to talk about it. We're also going to make a point not to focus on that.
Yeah.
I think it's relevant to talk about, you know, because it is such a news item at the moment. But once we start talking about the movie, don't worry. We know this movie was made years ago. We're not going to, try to conflate the two necessarily. So, in fact, Chris... why don't you tell listeners just a little bit about Hancock before we start talking about the man of the hour?
Yes. So it is directed by Peter Berg, most famous for Friday Night Lights, most recently a bunch of Mark Wahlberg action movies, and Battleship, which is a movie we talked about.
F2F alum.
An F2F alum. Battleship. Please go back to listen to that episode if you haven't. This was written by Vi Vincent Neo, his first feature, and Vince Gilligan, the creator of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. So he went on to great things. Hancock had a budget of $150 million. Domestically, it made $228 million. And worldwide, it made $629 million. This was a mega hit and the fourth highest grossing film of 2008. This is actually, I think it's cited as Will Smith's last big hit of his career.
I think it's definitely his last July 4th hit, right?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, Chris, I would dispute. I think he had another big hit recently. See what I'm saying? Oh my God! I'm sorry. It can't be helped at this point. You know?
No.
Okay, again, we're going to get there. In fact, Chris, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't even go any further. Maybe we should just. I know you and I are both itching to talk about it, and I think it just needs to be addressed up top, right? So let's just talk about the incident, and I guess it all fits in anyways because obviously this is a big star vehicle for Will Smith. So I think it's worth it for both of us to talk about how we feel about Will Smith, but also how do we feel about Will Smith today as opposed to a week ago? And maybe that will filter in a little bit into the conversation about this movie, or at least what this movie is positing for his image at the time, right?
Out of the two of us, I have been a bigger Will Smith fan.
I think we've actually addressed some of this before when we did Wild Wild West. So
correct.
You can go back and listen to part one of our Will Smith duology.
Exactly. And if you go listen back to that, I'm gonna kind of be, I'll be defending Will Smith against Trev quite a bit.
You'll be defending that piece of crap movie because you're an idiot.
Yeah, so Will Smith to me is just one of the last remaining superstar mega movie stars, right? We always talk about Tom Cruise being the last one, but I would say kind of they're kind of beside themselves, beside each other, except for Tom Cruise has kind of found the franchise at this point, while I think Will has been searching for that franchise, especially in his later years. But again, I am a fan of Will Smith. Today,
I think sorry, not to cut you off, but I also think Will Smith's megastardom is especially impressive and surprising because of how fast it happened too.
Yes.
I think that's what separates him from the Tom Cruises and the Brad Pitts and the DiCaprios of the world. You go look at their filmographies, and they worked for it, for quite a while. Not to say Will Smith didn't, but what I mean to say is they were plugging along for quite a bit before they had that big blow up moment, Mm-hmm. And then you look at Will Smith's filmography, and of course, he came to fame first as a rapper, DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, and then of course a TV star with the sitcom Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which I think, have you ever met anyone who doesn't like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? That's impossible, right? Everybody loves that show. But then movie-wise, he just takes a couple small strides into films with small roles in a couple movies like Where the Day Takes You and Made in America. A pretty actually critically acclaimed role in 6 Degrees of Separation. So those are his first 3 movies. And then right out the bat, his 4th movie is Bad Boys. Mm-hmm. His 5th movie is Independence Day. And his 6th movie is Men in Black. And he's just off and running. He's the biggest star in the world. And for that to happen so fast, that's just insane. I mean, I think that's what often gets forgotten about his rise to fame. It's just how it wasn't a slow build up. It was, oh my God, this guy's arrived. He is here, and he is conquering entertainment.
Some may say that he went from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air to Mad Boys to Independence Day, and then to Men in Smack.
Yeah, some might say.
But yes, I in the year 2022 post incident, his star has really fallen in my eyes. It sucks to say that. I don't know if I've been wrestling with it because it was obviously immediately unacceptable right away. And any defense of that just seems really fucking stupid. And also a defense of it, I think, comes from his stardom. He's such a mega superstar that has curated his entire career to be extremely polished and good guy Will and blah, 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 that I think his fans see that and they almost can't even deal with it mentally. It's almost like their brain broke in that moment to be like, we'll make excuses for it. I mean, he's going through a tough time and he's not that happy right now. And he had that red table talk and they're trying to make amends for him. And I think that has to do with his superstardom,
That's why it was especially surprising though, too, right? So I know there's been a lot of, and I get it. I sympathize with, at the point we're at, as we record this, we're, over a week removed from it. Mm-hmm. And you've certainly seen a lot of people saying oh my God, are we still talking about this? Why is this still an issue? And I don't disagree. But at the same time, you do have to keep in mind, there is only one other actor I think would have been more surprising to do that. And that is if Tom Hanks had gotten up and smacked someone at the Oscars. Yeah. But it's obviously it would have been a story. It would have been surprising and shocking if anybody did it. But I mean, if Russell Crowe gets up and smacks Chris Rock, we all go oh yeah, I think there's a lot of other people at auditorium where you would have been surprised, but not to the level. I think if you told anyone 2 hours before the Oscars started, hey, in 2 hours, Will Smith is going to be one of the most infamous people in entertainment because of a physical assault, you just would never assume that, because he has cultivated both his image and his career to a very particular way. And unfortunately, it did seem, and I think this feeds into the acceptance speech too, to me, I don't want to diagnose anyone. And it's, actually, Will Smith and Jada Smith's personal lives is their business. And I think it's like weird that we even have to talk about it. I also think it's weird that they've publicly shared so much of it. So I guess that is part of it. But it did all seem to be an unfortunate culmination of what has been like obviously a rough few years for him. And you were talking about how like his image is kind of tarnished in your eyes just a little bit. I was thinking like this is like maybe off topic and unfair, but then I was like looking at his filmography and I was like, when's the last time I kind of like cared about Will Smith even before this, And I didn't see King Richard, which I wanted to. I'm sure he's great in it, but really like I don't know, like the last like Will Smith movie that I personally kind of really dug was maybe like Hitch, and that's 2005, and that's just like a lot of like, yeah, that's okay kind of movies here and there, and then like a lot of like big misses, I think he's great in Suicide Squad. I guess he's like one of the highlights, but that movie is a dumpster fire, and then you have things like like Bright and Winter's Tale, and I don't know, like just like you did like Aladdin where his genie is so yeah. I wish I guess what I'm trying to get at, I sound like I'm not making any sense, but I guess what I want to say is I wish I could be as big of a fan of Will Smith as I was in the 90s and the early 2000s, because there was a period where I really, really was, and that seems like so long ago to me now. And it sucks that like the most relevant thing about him now is this,
Well, I think again, it's not so much tarnishing his filmography, like whatever. Like I know you don't like a lot of his movies, and that's fine. But I think Will Smith, the brand in general, has been kind of a source of positivity and charisma, worldwide. And again, he almost, I mean, this incident has kind of proven that maybe that's a lot of bullshit. You know what I mean? And maybe you and other people have seen through it this whole time. But I think just like the general worldwide audience was, and that's why it's been so shocking. Because just imagine if you will, that's not what I meant, but imagine if you will, Will Smith, you found out that he was put in handcuffs. Mm-hmm. That's like a visual that actually makes me kind of sick to my stomach. Like it feels gross to even think that. But like you said, Russell Crowe, and no disrespect to Russell Crowe, but I mean,
oh, please, Mr. Crowe, no disrespect, no disrespect.
yeah. But like,
get that. What are you doing? Get that phone out of your hand, Russell.
But like if somebody said to me that Russell Crowe was in a cop car behind the Oscars, I'd be like, yeah, that tracks. Mm-hmm. But I find this one is so it breaks your brain a little bit to think that lovable, charismatic, super megastar Will Smith, again, Fresh Prince, like is a defining thing for so honestly many generations, and it's gross to like think of that guy doing something like this. Like it just doesn't compute. I don't want to. So you just said something a moment ago, and I don't want to agree that, or I guess I should say, I don't think that this shows that the reputation he built up was bullshit. That's not how I would take this. Sure.
Instead, what I would say is maybe this proves that we always need to remember that all these people are human, right? I know this is something you and I have talked about, right? We need to stop elevating and putting all these celebrities on pedestals, because at the end of the day, they all have their personal problems. They all are capable of making these mistakes. So on like a purely human level, I don't even want to get like that angry about it, and I don't want to be like, it's so disgusting. What I find fascinating about it is because you and I are so interested in movies and the business of movies and the hard work people put in to cultivate particular images. That's what I find fascinating, is that he worked so hard and so long to have this image. And I think the double irony of this, like if this had just happened while he was promoting the movie, of course it would be a story. But the fact that it happened on the night that was finally like his crowning moment, right? Yeah. The thing he's been building to forever, like he's been one of those anointed people for a while, ever since like the days of Ali, I would say, which I think was his first Best Actor nomination. Yeah. Where you'd say like, oh, eventually Hollywood is going to give him an Oscar. He's just too powerful a figure in Hollywood. He's just got to find that right role, that right movie. And then he found it, and everyone knew. And, my intro was talking about how predictable the Oscars were. Everybody went into that night knowing Will Smith is getting his Oscar tonight. And the fact that that's the night where that image and that like control that he's been maybe holding on to for the last few years finally snapped, and like he did something. It's that's what is like. There is a level of like weird sadness to it, and just like it just yeah, as you said, it's like that's what adds this like baffling level of just bizarre irony to it.
That's why we will be talking about this moment for decades. You know, this is a moment that will haunt the guy, you know, for his entire career, and that's such a it's a shame that again he worked for 30 years so goddamn hard to curate such a nice guy persona, and in this one second it's just shattered, and I feel you'll never be able to talk about his career without citing this. And honestly, as we're seeing right now, there's fallout obviously of his of some of his projects right now that are being on hold, or because maybe a studio doesn't, every time they're going to promote, you know, let's just say hell, Hancock 2, we'll get back to Hancock obviously, but let's say if they want to talk about Hancock 2, they're going to run this clip at every news junket, you know, every single interview. They'll be like, nice guy Will Smith back in 2022 when he made a fool out of himself. You know what I mean? Like, it's just going to be, you can't escape it, and he won't ever escape it. This happened in the worst possible timing in the world of social media, honestly.
Yeah, I don't entirely disagree. I will say at the end of the day, he's still Will Smith, and we are still so celebrity obsessed and forgiving that I mean, Louis C.K. just won a Grammy. That's pretty gross, you know? And it's like, and that's for something, well, I would say to be far worse than this, you know? We're only a week and a half out, and yes, we've been hearing about how some of his projects are maybe kind of, you know, they're not sure what to do with them, but I don't imagine Hollywood is going to entirely turn its back on Will Smith, and I think he's probably like one decent, and again, this actually does tie into Hancock, in terms of a PR level, right? He is one like well orchestrated apology tour away from kind of starting a comeback, you know, and that's actually how it could be positioned now as a comeback. And I'll tell you what, like the maybe like the coup de grace it will be, and I still like I in my heart of hearts feel like 80% certain this will happen, is next year's Oscars, him and Chris Rock walking out together and doing like a little comedy bit, you know, where they like walk out and Will Smith is kind of giving Chris like the stare down as Chris makes some jokes. You know, I feel like if you get to that point where everyone goes, oh, okay, you're letting the air out of the room now, we can all laugh about it, I think he'll be okay. But the other option is, I don't know how interested in this he would be, but what if he just like leans into it and he's like, you know what, I'm like a new Will Smith now, you know, and starts finally playing. Because, you know, we were talking about the image he's cultivated, and I think, again, what adds to the irony of this is he is someone who's been on record as turning down some very intriguing roles. Of course, the most infamous example being Django Unchained, which Tarantino wrote with him in mind.
I had said yes to Django, but it was more about the creative direction of the story. To me, it's as perfect a story as you could ever want. A guy that learns how to kill to retrieve his wife that has been taken, you know, as a slave. Like, to me, that's when I choose movies, I'm choosing the arc. I read the first 35 pages and I read the ending, right? And to me, that idea is perfect. And it was just that Quentin and I couldn't see. I wanted to make the greatest love story that African Americans had ever seen from American cinema.
They did that, Irish Love Jones.
Right. I know.
How did you say no to Quentin? Did you pick up the phone and call him?
No, you just have your people. No, I'm joking. No, but we talked. We met. We came. We talked. We sat for hours and hours and hours about it. I loved it. I wanted to make that movie so badly, but with that story, I felt the only way I could make that movie is it had to be a love story, not a vengeance story. I don't believe in violence as the reaction to violence. So when I'm looking at that, it's like, no. It has to be for love. The only way he can retrieve his love is to do this. He can't want to be this. No. Like, violence begets violence. For me, I just couldn't connect to violence being the answer. Love had to be the answer.
And then, so that's where people get like this, like kind of schadenfreude of like, ha, the guy who doesn't like violent stuff, he did something like violent on TV, you know. But like, what if now he just says like, yeah, okay, now I'm actually going to just start playing hard asses in R-rated movies? That would be like an interesting swerve, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I would love that, of course. Like, we've talked about it in past, privately and on the podcast, that him taking more unique, fun, different, exciting, edgy roles would be sweet. I know we'll forgive him, obviously. I know the world will. I know Hollywood has short-term memory anyway, and also the public has the even shorter-term memory. I guess it's just, will he go back to Fresh Prince, super goody two-shoes? You know, and I guess it's just one of those things that it's gonna follow in that sense. And there's also a lot of like jokes going on too, especially about him and Jada. We're not gonna make those jokes, but some of them are pretty funny. But we're not gonna do them because we've probably heard them all. Maybe Hancock. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Can I say that?
Yeah, it's fine. I'll allow
okay,
it.
you're allowed that. Okay, that's the last one. I think that is also maybe gonna last. You know? And that's even worse. Like you said before, they're putting all of their family baggage on the web all the time. And that comes back to haunt you, as we're seeing and will continue to see, I think.
Yeah, I guess we probably want to start wrapping this so we get into the movie of the moment. But yeah, it is just, to me, as I'm walking this very thin line of being like so bored of talking about it, but like just so perplexed and fascinated by it. It's kind of like, you know, it's like, what more is there to say? But at the same time, it is really, if you follow movies, if you follow the entertainment industry, it is one of the most kind of surprising and just like, what the F kind of moments that we've seen in a long time. And maybe it's, I don't know, it sucks that it has to involve real human peoples and real human people, I should say, and careers. But maybe it's something like, maybe it was finally a shock to the system we needed, because there had been no interesting things happening in the entertainment world. It was just all discussion of like Marvel movies and all that stuff, right? And then finally there's like something else to get our attention. Unfortunately, I do think it's like also stealing attention away from, you know, other bad stuff that's happening with other stars of like lower levels. So I guess I do hope people get their priorities straight. You know, we will start to get over this a little bit, but there's no way we couldn't talk about it in a Hancock episode released just a couple weeks after it happened. So hopefully people are willing to indulge us in that.
And with that, let's get to the movie itself. And as we usually do, we like talking about the development history and the production of how this movie got made. So let's go back in time. Trev? Let's get into the Wayback Machine, all right? And let's go to 1996 when this really started to come to fruition. This was originally...
Will Smith was just making Independence Day at this point. That's how long ago this movie, the gestation period is,
So originally, this was a spec script by Vincent Nyon, and it was about a 226-page script, I believe. So more so than a spec script. Like, it was full on. But it was called Tonight He Comes. Little double entendre, obviously, there, that we will get to. But this is kind of one of the most famously development hell sitting on a shelf in somebody's office films in Hollywood, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not even that I don't think the development hell is necessarily even the most interesting part. It's like what happened before it got into development, like how long that took, and the differences of opinions kind of early on about what this should be. So, you know, Vincent Nyon, who seems to be fairly somewhat like reclusive. I don't think a lot is known about him. But he wrote the script, and apparently he was very kind of inspired by his love of the Superman character. But he wanted to make like a more adult Superman movie, like, you know. So here's the strange thing about talking about Hancock now, is I feel like a lot of the things we say, people are going to listen to and be like, well, what a cliche, that's a trope. But it wasn't in 1996, you know. The idea of, superhero movies still hadn't even really taken off in a bigger way yet. We were in in-between, the in-between of the original Burton Batman franchise kind of crashing and burning, and the resurrection of superhero films with, you know, Blade and X-Men, Spider-Man. So he writes the script about, you know, this this real adult take on Superman, with this like drunken, asshole of a superhero who gets involved. And I guess we'll talk about some of the differences as we talk about the movie itself. But essentially his version is about this asshole drunken superhero gets involved with this like regular family and the impact he has on the family. And a lot of people are like really, really intrigued by it. And as you said, like early on, it starts getting attention from some pretty big names. So Akiva Goldsman is the producer who kind of at first kind of comes across it and is like very, very intrigued. And I think you and I have talked about Akiva Goldsman before.
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest fan of Akiva Goldsman. I think he's kind of hackish, but he recognizes something in the script, and he starts shopping it around. And he encourages Artisan Entertainment at the time, Richard Saperstein, the president, to acquire it in 2002. So even like that, like from 1996 to 2002, I think a lot of people read it and like are interested in it, but it doesn't really find a home until 2002. Do you want to talk then about some of the filmmakers who eventually get attached to it?
For sure. Tony Scott is the first one on board, a brother of Ridley Scott. The late, great Tony Scott, I will say.
Yeah.
Then he kind of moves it in front of Michael Mann, who is attached to direct it, but then decides, you know what, I'm actually going to go make Miami Vice instead, which is another...
Don't worry, Michael. We'll still get to you. We'll still get to you with Miami Vice later on.
Yeah. And that's when he leaves the project, that's when Vince Gilligan of Breaking Bad fame and then John August, another writer, come out to rewrite Neo's script. Which gains the attention of Jonathan Mostow. Terminator 3, I would say, maybe is his quote-unquote claim to fame. Not a lot of fame, but definitely his claim. And at this point, they write a 10-page treatment that is written specifically for Will Smith. So the idea at this point is Will Smith is on a major high with his films coming out in like the early 2000s. And then coming off of Pursuit of Happiness, they want to get this made. And Smith, what does he sign here? He signs a pay-or-play contract. And when we talk superstardom in Hollywood, they get paid. Will Smith makes $20 million on the film and 20% of the film's gross.
And then we still get some like hurdles here because he signs on, but it keeps kind of getting delayed because so once Will Smith comes on, there are those good old creative differences between him and Jonathan Mostow. And Jonathan Mostow decides to depart. And at that point, they slot in Gabriel Buccino, who has just recently directed The Pursuit of Happiness, starring Will Smith. So it seems like, okay, well, this will be fine. Like, these two have just worked together. We'll be able to slot this. But because of that delay, Smith takes the opportunity to, instead of going right into this film, he goes off to make I Am Legend. So he does I Am Legend first, and now in that like interim, it just gives them more time to say, like, well, let's like tweak this script even more. And I know from what I read, Chris, I'm fuzzy on these details here, but doesn't it eventually get to a point where like Vince Gilligan actually leaves this production and this writing to go do Breaking Bad, to go like start that show up?
He does. That's exactly what happens. Yeah. It's kind of it's kind of spinning its tires so much that he just leaves to go make his own thing.
Yeah. What I would be really interested to hear, because I don't think none of the articles I read went into too much detail about this, but I'm very fascinated to know about that 10-page treatment that originally like roped Will Smith in, and that entire development process from then to like what we eventually get on screen. Because obviously we're going to talk about it, but it's quite clear what we eventually get is very far removed from the script Tonight He Comes that Vi Vincent Neo originally wrote. It even goes through some name changes. At a certain point, they decide to call it. I guess they decide like we can't have the title of our movie be an ejaculation joke, so they decide to instead go with John Hancock as the title. Then eventually they just shorten it to Hancock. Great move, guys. No puns there. So yeah, I mean, it's just. I think when we talked about Wild Wild West, I think you and I talked about this like I don't want to call it a rumor. I think it's a fairly well-known fact that Will Smith. We talked about this image he cultivates. He's one of those individuals who is very aware of his star power and very aware of that image and wants to keep it and maintain it, and is very choosy about his projects and will make sure that the projects are tailored around him. So I guess the point I'm making here is, and I want to ask your opinion of this, Chris, do you think that Will Smith was originally looking at this as a real opportunity to finally come in and do something quite different, something he hadn't done before, a much darker kind of film as we have heard the original script was, and then other people changed it around him? Or do you think Will Smith was the driving force to lighten it up a little bit and turn it into maybe what we received?
I think maybe a little bit of both, but I lean more actually to that he wanted to take a chance here. And the reason I say that is because everybody involved, all the directors we just named, all the creative forces, were all interested in this R-rated deconstruction of the superhero genre. That was what was bringing everybody to the table. So I can't imagine that not being spoken to Will, especially in that 10-page treatment, and also in the subsequent meetings that gets him to sign on. Also, as we know from the production history, this was retooled a ton due to focus groups and a ton due to just in the editing room. So I have a feeling that he was trying to flex a little bit and break a little bit of his shell. But when this movie was shown to normies who think of mega superstar Will Smith, they were turned off. And I think they weren't ready for it the way that maybe Will Smith was ready in his career. I don't know if the audience was ready. Like we said, this movie made a shit ton of money. And I think that proves that people came out to see Will Smith. But were they necessarily happy with what they got? I'm not sure. Probably not, because we didn't get a sequel, and that's why we're talking about it. But I think just like The Slap and just like some of his defenders, I think there's a disconnect. When you see Will Smith play a guy that is swearing at children, abusing them, getting dirty with just women in his language, and some even like he tries to grab a girl's skirt without asking, all this other stuff. I think there's a disconnect, and your brain kind of breaks, and you're like, this is working for and against him at the same time. So I think maybe creatively, yes, I do believe that Will Smith wanted to make something different, but the focus groups really screwed him.
Yeah. So we didn't we should have mentioned in that lead up to that obviously, as we already mentioned before, the director they eventually settle on is Peter Berg. So Berg was actually halfway through making The Kingdom when he heard about this movie and called Michael Mann, and apparently, I guess it sounds like maybe he pitched himself.
Yeah.
I guess this probably was a fairly buzzed about project. So obviously he had a take on it. Just plucked Jason Bateman right off that Kingdom set, brought him right over to play the secondary male lead in this. Also an interesting testament of the time where Jason Bateman would be the second male lead in a big blockbuster movie. I don't know if I know Ozark is pretty popular, but I don't know if you'd get away with that today necessarily.
Right.
And then we get Charlize Theron in the very crucial, maybe even more crucial than you might expect, female lead role. So definitely, a strong cast and a director. I don't think The Kingdom did very well, but he still was writing a lot of that Friday Night Lights clout, as you were saying. He was a well-respected director at the time, I think. So he'd also done The Rundown, which I believe was a fairly minor hit, a movie I quite like quite a bit. So yeah, I think the pieces seem to be falling into place. Yeah, so maybe it's just time for us to finally talk about the film proper and how we feel about it.
Suspects on northbound 110. Heavy gunfire exchange. We need backup.
Fellas, give yourselves up quietly. Okay.
Hancock's latest act of so-called heroics has once again enraged city officials.
I can smell that liquor on your breath.
Because I've been drinking.
Jackass.
Call me a jackass one more time.
Jackass.
How about you, Thickness? Goggles?
Hancock, I knew you'd come.
Not okay. I do public relations. People don't like you, Hancock.
But I look like I care what people think.
Right now, there's a DA trying to figure out how to come up here and put you in jail. I say you go.
He's not gonna go.
People take you for granted, We gotta make people miss you.
If you don't move, your head is gonna piss.
Jail watch day 5 and crime is still on the rise.
You got a phone call. It's the chief of police. He says he needs your help.
You have a calling. You're a hero, Hancock. You're gonna be miserable the rest of your life until you accept that.
Life here can be difficult for me. After all, I'm the only one of my kind. You deserve better from me. I will be better. I ain't wearing that. What? It's a little tight.
Hancock, I need you to end this. Do I have permission to touch your body?
Yes!
It's not sensual. It's not that you're not an attractive woman. Maybe on a different day.
Get me out of here! Hancock is down. He looks hurt.
That's it. Make it look hard.
Hancock, a one-of-a-kind superhero, has become a laughingstock in Los Angeles. Due to his alcoholism and destructive tendencies, he costs the city millions of dollars whenever he goes into action. Hancock then saves the life of public relations expert Ray Embry from an oncoming train. Here's when Ray sells Hancock on the idea that his image can be restored as a true superhero. He then brings Hancock home for dinner and introduces him to his son Aaron and his wife Mary. But for some mysterious reason, Mary doesn't want Hancock anywhere near her or her family. Can Will Smith restore his image after making some truly stupid public displays of violence? We're here to discuss that and the movie Hancock right now.
Had to get that last one in. But it really is, it's kind of impossible to watch Hancock, at least today in the immediate aftermath, and not often think about the parallels. But so, Chris, had you ever seen this before, just first off?
I did. I saw it most likely opening weekend, but definitely the first week it came out, yeah.
Okay, so oddly enough, I don't think you and I have ever talked about this film because I entirely do not know how you feel about it. So I'm gonna let you go first because I'm curious because this was a first time watch for me. But as someone who had experience with it before, I'm curious to hear like what was your reaction before and how you feel about it now.
Oh, interesting. I actually didn't know this was your first time view, by the way.
Yeah, no, never. I had somehow, well, I shouldn't say somehow avoided it. I mean, I just never cared enough to watch it. But yeah.
So I'll give you my first impression the first time when I saw it. So I saw it back in 2008. And I thought it was pretty forgettable. And it just kind of, it was definitely lesser Will Smith. And that's coming from somebody who defends Wild Wild West. You know what I mean? I just was like, okay, well, that wasn't exactly what I wanted from it. It wasn't as exciting as I wanted it to be or whatnot as Will Smith becoming his original superhero franchise, This time I watched it, and I will say that I like the first 40 minutes a lot more than the last half. I think this is a movie that is absolutely in conflict with itself in numerous ways. And especially doing the history and watching it this time, I was so aware of it. I was so aware of the tonal shifts. I was so aware that this is obviously edited to hell on the page and in the camera. And I think the first half is fun enough. It got some chuckles out of me. Will Smith is playing a different version of something you've never seen of him do before. He is an asshole. He is destructive. He's an alcoholic. And I think it works, especially with Jason Bateman being his counterpart. I think it's pretty good. But once the middle twist happens, which we'll get to, I think it becomes such a different movie that it just completely loses itself. And I feel like the second half of the movie should be the sequel. This is usually something we save to say later, but I just feel
different movie.
Or just a different movie altogether. Yeah, you're so right. You're so right. And I think the first half though is enjoyable. I did like it. And especially even thinking about all the Oscar stuff in the back of my head, right? And his star falling from grace even in my heart. I think the first half is good. The second half is just like really just what the hell is going on entirely.
It really has been a long time since I can remember seeing a movie that has such a hard pivot in it. Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right that there is good material in this movie, and almost all of it is in the first 30 to 40 minutes. You're absolutely right. And I not to say I loved it at that point, but sure. I could see the potential of what this movie could have been more so in the first half. And this movie really does go really unfortunately off the rails with that twist reveal. And yeah, you and I often talk about our love of movies that can have varying tones, like, the ability to mix and match tones in one film, but you have to have a really deft hand to pull it off. And not every filmmaker can do it, and not every script does it. I love when it works, but there's nothing more nightmarish than when it doesn't work in some cases. And you're right that this is like two different movies trying to have a conversation with each other, but these two movies shouldn't be in the same room together. They shouldn't be in the same zip code together. Actually, that kind of feeds into the story elements of the movie too. But yeah, it sucks because like it really does not know if it wants to be a goofy, like somewhat goofy dark comedy or like a very, very serious, like pulling at the heartstrings kind of character study.
Yeah.
And I think either one of those maybe would have worked, but man, they just do not. They just do not mesh at all here. And the other thing I just want to say before we get into talking about it is I've seen a lot of talk with people saying this movie was ahead of its time. People keep saying, I've seen its defenders will say it was ahead of its time. It just came too early in the superhero cycle. Which, if you think about it, if you place this historically, it is very interesting. This came out right in between the releases of Iron Man and Dark Knight. Mm-hmm. Right before Iron Man came out, and then a little bit later this came out, and then Dark Knight comes out. And that is obviously the year where everything changes for comic book movies, right? The MCU starts, and then Dark Knight starts the discussion of, well, how come these can't be Oscar movies? And they freak out, and they change the Oscar rules because of this movie, And then forever on, comic book movies are all anyone really cares about after this. And so people say, like, well, this was just ahead of its time. If it had come out a little bit later, people would have responded to it more because it's like this interesting deconstruction of the superhero genre. Chris, I wonder if you agree. I kind of can't go along with that mode of thinking because I don't think this movie ends up having anything interesting to say about the superhero genre. It's not really like, because those tropes weren't as well established at that point, because the genre hadn't taken over like Hollywood, I don't really think anyone making this movie was interested in having this be like a knockdown piece on a superhero film or anything. I think they just like the idea of like a drunk Superman.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like where the movie goes, I don't think it's not Watchmen. It's not trying to be this like interesting deconstruction of these particular tropes and stereotypes of the genre. It's really just about this like one character.
Yeah.
And like what's going to become of this character. And so I don't necessarily agree with that. I would only say it's ahead of its time because maybe it's ahead of its time now because you can watch it and go like, oh, that's the Will Smith of like the slap. Maybe people somehow saw that coming when they said it. But yeah, I don't. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is I don't think this is like a very effective satire of superhero films.
No.
And I think it's also not juggling its tones well, and that's its ultimate failing. So I didn't feel like I don't feel like I made a mistake not seeing it up till now. It is pretty forgettable, as you said.
Yeah, and that's its ultimate sin, right? Like it's just it's in one ear out the other.
Yeah,
I do defend a little bit of that ahead of its time. I think not so much up against movies like Watchmen or that true deconstruction. I would actually compare it more like to a Deadpool. And I think Hancock almost is a movie that is doing Deadpool before that, minus the meta-ness.
Yeah, but Deadpool is doing it so much better, though. No. And like if this had come out closer to Deadpool, I think it's like weaknesses would only be highlighted more, almost.
No, and I agree with that. And I think you nailed it by saying Deadpool came out at the perfect time. I mean, Deadpool's been a character for a long, long time in the comics, and it took until 2016 to really, break through as the character that people wanted, right? People at that point were kind of tired of the 10 years of Marvel in a weird way. Like they obviously are turning out for the Marvel films, but they wanted a quote-unquote more adult superhero movie. And I think this has pieces of that. It could have the gross out humor. It could have a little bit more. As we said, it was filmed as an R-rated movie. Got dumbed down to PG-13 after 3 MPAA meetings, I believe. Some of the scenes that they took away were 2 out of 3 F-bombs. They took away, I think, some needles in the arm for some drug use. They took away, what else was there? The most infamous one is Hancock ejaculates into the ceiling 3 times.
Yeah, which was in the version I watched. So obviously I watched the unrated cut, which I know was released on DVD and Blu-ray later. Did you watch the theatrical cut again?
Yeah, that's the one on Canadian Netflix.
Okay, yeah. So the version I was able to rent was the unrated version. So I saw that the ejaculation sequence. And it's like very funny that they cut that. And then like Peter Berg is even on record talking about how he was so glad to cut that because he just felt like that joke never landed. And that he said, like, you don't ever recover the audience from that point on. But that was like literally the original like main conceit or one of the main conceits of the movie to the point where the original film's title was like about that, right? Yeah. It was about this old joke that we've heard, it's like said in Mallrats. There's been like essays written about it. Something comic book fans always talk about, like, could Superman have sex with like a human woman? And this movie was like trying to address that. And I'm guessing in like the original script, which there's a part of me that would be really interested in reading it if it wasn't 226 pages. But I have to imagine that was like a very, very big plot point. This idea of how one of the reasons this guy is so miserable and so lonely is because he's like physically incapable of having a relationship with a woman. This movie does kind of just treat that as like a punchline, though, right? Like I've seen the sequence, and he does bring this woman home from a bar. And he's just like, they're she comes up to the bar. She's excited. She's basically like a groupie. She's like, the idea of like screwing a superhero is a big turn on for her. So he brings her back to the trailer he lives in, and he essentially just tells her, hey, when I start to climax, you have to get away from me. You have to you have to get away. She doesn't quite believe him, but she starts coming on to him strong. He doesn't last very long. He's kind of like a little bit of a 3-pump chump. No offense, Will Smith. And he ends up like pushing her away, and then you cut to an outside shot of the trailer, and yeah, you see like it looks like bullets essentially blasting through the roof of the trailer. What is interesting though, and this is like the first kind of when that scene is left in, it actually is the first indication of this movie trying to have it both ways, with being a goofy comedy but also being like a serious character piece. Because you have that, which is clearly like, you can't help but laugh at it. Oh, I bet you don't laugh, but you can't help but realize it's a joke, Yeah. Aha, he came and it like blasted out his roof. But then it gets like very, very sad after that, to where he actually thinks that maybe this girl likes him, and that, they have this connection now. But she's so scared by what just happened, she sneaks out the window in the bathroom and leaves. And the whole time she's leaving, he's like talking to her through the door, and he's like, maybe we can tomorrow we can get breakfast, and I can take you to these places. I can fly you to some different places around the world that I know. And then he sees that she left, and he's like very, very sad. I'm like, wow. In like the space of like 30 seconds, you try to go from making me laugh at like projectile ejaculation to being like, oh, this poor guy. And I think that really tells you what this movie's trying to do for the rest of it, and it doesn't work there, and it really never works the rest of the runtime either.
It takes a very deft hand to do that. And hand slap. Okay, sorry.
Oh, jeez.
But it does to balance that tonal shift, especially that quickly. Not many filmmakers can do it. And and like Peter Berg, I've seen enough Peter Berg movies at this point to kind of know who he is and know what he makes and the style. He's almost like a Michael Bay light. And I use that as I like Michael Bay. I will defend him quite a bit, but I know the kind of movies he makes, and I think Peter Berg, he's very patriotic. He he almost has the exact same color grading as Michael Bay all the time, but he's just not. It's not very in depth, thought provoking stuff, and he made Battleship, and
keep Battleship's name out your mouth.
And I think it's just, you just need a better filmmaker for this. And again, I think there is a disconnect having Will Smith as the title character. I think he can pull off both of those things, but I don't know, it just doesn't sit right when you're watching him do it. Does that make sense? Like, am I right saying that?
There is a part of me that, as I was watching this, I was trying to think of like who would be better for this, like the version of this we have, right? Because I do think you just mentioned that this needs a better filmmaker, and I won't disagree. The one thing I do disagree with is you said you've seen enough Peter Berg movies where you kind of know who he is. I would say like the opposite. I've seen a number of Peter Berg movies, and my thing is I still don't kind of know who he is, right? I don't know like what I get his like visual style, and I get his like his tics, but then you look at like the rundown, and you compare that to Hancock, and you compare that to Battleship, and then you compare that to that string of like Lone Survivor, Deepwater Horizon, Patriots Day. And then like recently he did like Spencer Confidential, which looked like a kind of goofy, like, straight to streaming action movie. So I feel like he's a little bit all over the place, and I don't really know if he has like this defined persona as much as I don't want to call him a chameleon because that sounds almost too complimentary. But I think he's like a good journeyman director.
Yeah.
Right? I think he's a guy that you can give a project and he'll get it in on time probably, and well enough. And if the script is there, it'll probably be okay. So I think the issue with this movie is not the filmmaker as much as it is the script. I don't know too many filmmakers who could have made something of the version of the script we see on the screen here. But let's say you do have this version of the script. what actor would be better for this? Do you have any ideas about that? Because I was like really trying to think like who would like slot into this better.
The first thing that came to my head was Jamie Foxx.
Yeah, I can see that. I know there was like, did you see, for a brief moment, apparently Dave Chappelle was like, was in the mix as well. And I think, again, like Dave Chappelle might have really like been pretty great in like the first 40 minutes. I don't know what Dave Chappelle would have done with that, like that second half of the movie. You know, I think Jamie Foxx is actually a pretty good call. And that's interesting because obviously he was the replacement for Will Smith in, what? Django Unchained. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Sorry, total brain fart there. And if we want to talk about like other like Will Smith like replacements, essentially like even Idris Elba, I think might be like a little bit more captivating in this role than Will Smith. Yeah, because you're right. I get why they wanted Will Smith, and I get why Will Smith saw this as a challenge. But this movie's not really doing him any favors by asking him, as the character we're supposed to connect with, ping-ponging too much like emotionally and tonally throughout the movie. So he isn't. It's too bad. It really seems like a waste of his talents, unfortunately.
Yeah, because he's not allowed to be his charismatic self really at all. Like at all. And that's fine. That's the character. But it almost feels like when Will Smith is trying to be a dick, it's like he's trying really hard to do it.
That's the problem,
did you
right?
feel that?
He's not allowed to be his usual charming self, like you just said. But he's also, the movie's not letting him dive deep enough into the shittiness of this character to have it seem like an actual, like, oh my God, Will Smith is really trying something here. This is really something new for him. Like, that's the two, it had to be one of those extremes. You either give us classic Will Smith, which everyone always likes, or you go like, okay, you're really going to play a scumbag in this, and you're going to go all out, and you're going to lean in, and this is going to be like the dark, R-rated explorationist character that we promised you. But this movie, like, man, it just like goes for like the middle between those two. And so I think when you say it seems like he's trying too hard, I think it's more that I feel like he's like just bored with the material. I feel like he's like on set realizing this isn't as good as I originally thought it would be. And I think he's not, I don't think he's putting in a lot of effort into the more dramatic, serious parts of this. Because I think at a certain point, maybe he just was like, the funny stuff is whatever, that's cool, but I don't care about the rest of this.
Yeah, you nailed it by saying it's middle of the road for both sides, right? Like, Will's never belly achingly funny in the beginning. It is like somewhat funny. It's amusing, but it's not like a Deadpool laugh out loud. Nor is it extreme tug at your heartstrings, crying, somber in the second half. It's very blah on both sides. And honestly, let's just talk a little bit more about the plot itself. You know, I mentioned in the beginning that he saves a guy named Ray, played by Jason Bateman, and he is a PR expert. So then he kind of looks to Hancock, realizing, hey, this could be my big break as well, that I can resuscitate Hancock's persona in the public consciousness. So let me take him on. And his big plan is to say, Hancock, apologize for everything you've done, really mean it, and let's go to jail. Let's go to jail for a while. Let's go to prison for an extended amount of time, because crime will go up and the people will realize that they need you. But what we need to do is you need to repent. You need to say sorry for your crimes and stay in jail. And so the public thinks that you actually care. So let's throw you in prison.
I apologize to the people of Los Angeles. My behavior has been improper and I accept the consequences. I ask my fellow Angelinos for their patience and understanding. Life here can be difficult for me. After all, I'm the only one of my kind. During my incarceration, I will be participating in alcohol and anger management treatment. You deserve better from me. I can be better. I will be better.
Yeah, and this is another section, a big chunk of the film where, again, when you look at all these things just in pieces or in their context, it's like this movie will give you just tonal whiplash as you watch it. Because on the level of like the more dramatic sides, the prison sequence has one of the better moments. And that is the moment where he's out in the yard playing basketball with the fellow prisoners. and the basketball ends up getting accidentally thrown over the fence, right, and goes outside of the fence, and he can fly, right? There's nothing really keeping him there, and he decides to go get the basketball, and he flies out and grabs the basketball, and that obviously freaks everyone out. The guards start saying, "Oh my God, there's been an escape." They signed the alarms, but meanwhile he's just gone and grabbed the basketball, and you have that moment where he actually picks up the basketball, looks back at the prison. He's not happy there. He's bored. He does not like Ray's plan. He's not thrilled about this idea of being in prison. And he takes a couple extra beats where he thinks about, should I just leave? Like, there's nothing stopping me. These people can't do anything. And then he decides to fly back. And I was like, you know what? That actually, removed from the rest of the movie, that was a nice little moment. I thought it was like well performed by him. It's like well shot. Wouldn't it be much more effective if, I don't know, 5 minutes earlier, I hadn't seen him shove a guy's head up another guy's butt? So this is what I'm talking about, right? Because you said this movie has a lot of like Deadpool-ish, like gross out humor, and that's like the prime example of it. Yes, I'm not exaggerating. There is a scene where Hancock literally shoves a man's head up another man's ass.
Did you shove a man's head up another man's ass? We're gonna circle back to that.
And like they'll give you a scene like that, and then they'll want you to like right away pivot into, but now we're back into the serious drama. And it's like, hold on, movie. I'm still getting over the fact that you showed me a dude's head up another dude's ass. I'm not quite emotionally ready yet for this other material you're trying to show me.
And it lingers on that for a while too. It's not just like a quick cut. It's enough that you can see it, and then you start to wonder, like, how did they film that? Yeah. I actually love that moment as well when he's outside the fence. I wrote that down, being like, I like that there's a conscious decision he makes, and it just shows the growth of the character. That it's very simple.
That's actually the first moment of growth in the movie. I think is that decision that he makes right there.
Correct. And it works. It works really well. And then I do like that he does get called to action, and Ray comes and delivers him, your typical cliched X-Men leather suit.
Oh yeah, man, this was so 2000 X-Men movie,
big time. And he's obviously not into it, but he still wears it, and then he goes to this heist that's happening at a bank, and there's a bunch of hostages. And I really did like that he goes around saying "good job" to every cop, because earlier in the film, Ray's like, "Can you just at least just tell people that they do a good job?" I was like, that goes a little bit, when you see a cop, good job, when people are, when you're helping out the brothers in blue, you just make sure that they feel special.
So you've used the door, and the building's still intact. People are happy that you've arrived. They feel safe now. There's an officer there, and he's done a good job, so you might want to tell him he's done a good job.
The hell did I have to come for, Ray, if he's done a good job?
I see that you don't wear a bulletproof vest, security officer, and I respect your courage, because bullets don't bounce off you, they bounce off me. Let me hear you say it. Let me hear you say, "good job." Good. 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 Good job. Good job. Good job.
It's like he has a total disconnect, and he just literally says "good job" to almost every single person he meets in the most deadpan, serious way. And I thought that worked really, really well. I thought that was hilarious.
That's legitimately funny, and then also legitimately funny, and surprisingly ahead of its time is the moment where the female cop is like pinned behind her squad car. The criminals are firing on it, and he goes to save her, and Hancock takes a moment where he goes, "Do I have your permission to grab your body and pick you up?" And she's like, "Yes, of course you do." And he's like, "Okay, but I just want you to know." And he's like, and she's getting shot. He's just like, "I just want you to know it's not sexual. I mean, you are a very attractive woman. Don't get me wrong." And she's just like, "Would you get me the hell out of here?" Like, I thought that was very, very funny. And like, that seemed like a joke you would do today. And I was like, oh, wow, that's kind of surprising. This was in like a 2008 movie. Like kudos to them for that.
I think the highlight of the movie really starts in that prison. And then at that heist. I really think it kind of peaks there, because soon after the twist happens, right? And then it just kind of falls off a fucking cliff.
Imagine a version of this movie where you just stretched out everything we'd seen up to this point, right? Where you had we spent more time watching the fall of Hancock, maybe like an extra like 10 or 15 minutes, so we get to know his character a little bit more, because this movie just starts and the city knows who he is, and he's like already kind of considered a menace. And I was like, okay, that's not. It's not the worst way to start a movie, but we're kind of always. and a little bit of a distance from him as a character because we don't know, like, was he ever, like, well-liked? Was he ever very heroic? Did people used to like him, or has he always been like this? So imagine if you could spend a little bit more time giving us the backstory, a little bit more time with, like, Ray trying to, like, you know, convince him of this, a little bit more time in prison, and then have this moment where he finally becomes a hero again, be the climax of the film. Yeah. You know, this movie's only an hour and a half. I think you could make an hour and a half version that does all that and gives everything the time it needs. You know, what I thought was actually what was missing in the prison sequence, and I might bring this up again later, hint, hint. But I think what was missing in the prison sequence was show him start to have a relationship with, like, another prisoner. You know, like, it's all adversarial. What if he strikes up a friendship with someone in there, and that's what starts to, like, change his opinions and stuff too, right? And starts to, you know, finally chip away at his, like, icy heart. There's just so much more you could have done and have his heroic moment be the climax. But no, that's like the halfway point. And then, as you said, I guess we finally need to get to it. We then head into the twist of the film, which I know that the twist did not come from the original script. This was like the invention of, I don't know if it was Gilligan or like one of the other writers, but what were they thinking with this? Because this is where the movie, yeah, as you said, goes off a cliff.
Yeah. So listeners, if you haven't seen the film, this is the twist. So spoilers. Hancock is invited into Ray's home and befriends the child, and then kind of adversarial as well with the wife. They go out
this whole time. Charlize Theron plays the wife, and this whole time she's been always like kind of, why are you bringing this guy around? I don't like him. Which actually, you know, you kind of buy because the city doesn't like him. You know, so
totally. Mm-hmm. And they go out for drinks, and they all get a little drunk. And basically, Hancock says that he has amnesia. You know, a bunch of years ago, about 80 years ago, he woke up in a hospital and he doesn't remember his past. Well, they get home. He puts Ray to bed because he's super drunk. And then he goes downstairs to talk to Mary, played by Charlize Theron. And for whatever reason, is drawn in to kiss her. And this is when Charlize Theron grabs Hancock and throws him through the wall into the street. And it's revealed that Mary is just like Hancock. She is a superpowered being. And then they start to elaborate more on this. So it's not just that's the twist, that she's another one of him, right? So that works on, I guess that works on its own, like as a twist. Actually, I remember sitting in the theater and the entire audience actually gasping at that moment. They did not see that coming, and everybody was like, oh my God, wow. But what gets really weird about that twist is there's something about having like an adversary that's the same as you, and all of a sudden, maybe that's the drama, Trev. That they are sworn enemies or something. Mm-hmm. But no, they add this incredibly long exposition dump over multiple scenes that Charlize Theron just kind of spouts off. That just becomes her job at this point. And they have a 1,000-year relationship that they're basically like gods or angels or something, and they have a connection that so transcends time and space. And if they are too close together, and if they have too much of a romance, they become more human and thusly mortal. So they have to spend their time away from each other, and then they are superpowered. And so every few hundred years or so, their powers start to go away. So then Mary flees or something, and they break up. It's like they come together and then they break up because they want their powers back. And this last time he gets like hurt, like really, really, really hurt, and she just doesn't come to get him this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are the last two of their kind. And
yeah,
is that their kind is meant to be paired off, and they are meant to like always be drawn to their significant other, their pair, and they are the pair. But as you said, the fallout of that is that it almost sounds like an evolutionary idea that they are meant to come together and specifically become more human so they can grow old together.
Yeah.
Which is weird because she says they've been doing this for like thousands of years. So it seems like both of them should be like a little older than they are if this has been an on again, off again thing for that long, but whatever. And that's actually the thing. So what I want to say here is not only is that a weird twist, and
convoluted.
Right?
My explanation was hard to get through, and that's because that's what it sounds like in the movie.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, I was about to say, like, not only is it a weird twist, and not only does it then force you to spend the next 20 minutes of the movie just being told what is happening, primarily by Charlize Theron. And, like, with misdirects, too. Like, there's a whole sequence where first she's like, no, we're brother and sister. And you're like, what? Like, and it's just like, so it's like, it's overly convoluted to the point. But this is also the point where the script just stops trying, and everyone starts acting like idiots, and nothing makes sense anymore. Because suddenly, when you reveal that twist, the movie posits a number of questions that any like first year screenwriting student could easily look at this and bring up. And the movie, I don't think, is unaware of them, but it just hopes we would notice because it's such a short movie and it's flying by. So, like, for instance, why has she decided to live in the same city as Hancock then? Why hasn't she just ever said to Ray, you know what, actually, I can't live here. Can we move somewhere else? Because it seems like she does not want to be around Hancock. She's not happy about the fact of him being drawn back in her proximity. We eventually get so we have to have like, a third act obstacle. I don't know how much we want to jump ahead here, but we eventually, these like, the criminals, the same two that Will Smith earlier stuck with the one's head up the other's ass, they team up with a criminal Will Smith has recently put in jail, who he is like a mad bomber played by Eddie Marsan. And they escape from prison to go after Hancock, not aware that Hancock is losing his powers. So, like, it's like that weird thing where the movie, it's that dumb thing where the movie knows that we know he's losing his powers, the audience, but the characters don't. So their plan makes no sense. You don't go like, hey, let's go get the guy who, as far as we know, is bulletproof and can fly and can kill all of us in a second. So I hate that kind of stuff where the movie is like allowing us to like be aware of things the characters aren't and playing by our rules, though, not the characters. And I'm going to talk more about more of these things, but yeah, I do agree that at this point, just too many questions are brought up that are, the answers are so obvious, but the movie is just like getting willfully stupid at this point.
Willfully?
Yeah.
But no, you know me, and our listeners do as well. I need to know the rules.
What are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules?
I just need to know the rules. And this movie, for the last half, is consistently breaking the rules until the last final moment, which I'll get to, which is actually, it sort of works if the movie worked better. But I think just in general that when you lay out that mythos in these extended expository dialogue scenes, it just becomes like gobbledygook, like it just becomes like, what? Wait a second, huh? Like they even hint at Mary says, yeah, every time they came for us. And I'm like, well, who? Like, is there like an underground society that has hunted your kind? Are they still here? Is that what these criminals are now? Are they secretly part of this? And then like when they're in this hospital at the end, when they're both kind of or Hancock is hurt because he's losing his powers because they're falling in love again. She starts to feel his pain for maybe a scene or two, and that's never hinted at again. I just, the easiest thing to do to heal Hancock after he's been shot is for her to just fly away for like an hour. Mm-hmm.
Instead, after he's shot, she comes to the hospital where he is on an operating table.
Yeah. So my rules meter is just going off at this point, and I'm not happy about it because I'm just like, just fly away, because that's what Hancock does after she gets shot. She gets shot and Hancock just leaves, and it works well because the rules are in action. But it's like, well, she should have just fucking done that.
Well, and also, Chris, did this occur to you at all in either of your watches of it? Because I think you alluded to earlier, like, what if the twist? And I think this actually would have been more effective. Instead of saying that they are meant to be like a romantic pair, but she's resisting that. What if she'd instead been revealed to be this like villain that he'd always had? Like that's like they're opposite number, right? And she's been in hiding. Because here's the issue with this reveal too. Besides everything else we just mentioned, how the logic doesn't work and the rules break, the movie still wants us to like Mary. Mm-hmm. But I, as someone with years of comic book experience under my belt, and this movie is positioning itself as a deconstruction of the comic book genre, boy, I can't help if that pesky little "with great power comes great responsibility" idea. Yeah. And you're telling me that like this, she has the exact same powers as Hancock, and she's not doing anything with it. Now I get it's anyone's right to do what they want with their powers if powers are real, but it does make me look at that character differently to say she's just decided to live this like normal life. I get that that's a trope in comic books, but really she doesn't ever try to like do anything with her powers to like save the world or do any like good for humanity. And so yeah, it made me like, that's why I think you almost want her to be an antagonist, because then she does start being kind of bitchy with him too at that point, right? They like get in this like big fight, this like big knockdown, drag out fight through the city, and she's like not worried at all about like the property damage, as she's like picking up trucks and throwing it at him. So I don't know. Again, the movie gets very, very confused, but I'm just like, why is she not being a hero? Why has she been resisting this whole time? That's strange.
And why has she still been keeping this a secret from her husband? Doesn't it make more sense for Ray to want to resuscitate Hancock's career because he's like, hey, I'm living with one of you. You know, like I know that you can be better. I know you, like, she's a great mother. You know, like she's a great person. She's got a career. She's doing good. I can help you out. Isn't that more interesting? Like, I just don't understand why she's hiding it all these years into their marriage. So much so when she goes to like open up a jar of pickles or whatever, she like pretends that she can't open it up. And it's like, well, isn't it more interesting that Ray knows? I just, at least that she's superpowered. I don't know. I just found like there's, again, all these questions are happening while I'm watching it. And that's why that last half is such a miscalculation. Again, like you said, it's just a different movie entirely. It's just entirely on its own.
And it's not taking the time it needs to develop these ideas, because even the end where you mentioned, so, you know, they end up all of our main characters end up in a hospital because Hancock's been shot, and he's starting to lose his powers. This is also weird because this is where the exposition, I don't want to say breaks, but they just start taking like narrative shortcuts. She's like, you know, when we're together, we start to lose our powers. Well, at this point, they've spent like weeks hanging out, I would assume. He's been working with Ray quite a long time, and his powers have been fine. He only loses his powers at the exact moment the movie needs him to, you know? And when he does, he's actually nowhere near her. Like when he first loses his powers and gets shot, she is like in another part of the city. So the movie's just going like, yeah, it happens now. Why not? I guess once they see each other again, they're on a 3-week timer, I guess. I don't know. You know, it's like they just want us to figure that out, right? But so whatever. So he's been shot. He goes to the hospital. As we already said, if she just stayed away, he would heal. Instead, she comes to the hospital to talk to him more and reveal more of their past. And that's when she starts giving him like a tour of his body and like the wounds he has. He has scars over his body, and she's saying, "This is a scar you got when we were together and lost our powers back in like the 1700s. And this is a scar." So first of all, this is the first time we're being told he had scars. Wouldn't that have been a nice thing to know earlier? Because like we've always been, he's always positioned himself as invulnerable, and he's surprised he got shot. But doesn't he know he has scars? Like now he seems like an idiot. Yeah. So okay, that's bizarre. And then Ray and his son end up at the hospital too, and this is when the bad guys we talked about attack. So I'm just summarizing this so I can get to like what doesn't work about it. As you mentioned, in the like melee then, she gets shot as well. And because they're now in the same hospital, neither of them have their powers. She actually like flatlines on the bed, and Will Smith gains just enough of his strength back for just a moment to defeat the villains, and then he makes what the movie wants to position as like this like kind of sacrifice where he leaves, right? He flies away, or flies away as well as he can so that she can get her powers back and come back to life. And then he makes what I think the movie wants us to be like, oh, what a sweet ending. Like he decides to leave the love of his life, go to the other side of the country, let her and Ray continue to live, and she will now have her powers, which she doesn't use, so it doesn't matter. But she'll at least be alive, and he'll be able to use his powers elsewhere. But here's the problem. He never got his memories back. And so I don't see that as like a big sacrifice on his point, because he's only known, in his mind, he's only known this woman for about 3 or 4 weeks. So I don't care that he's like leaving her behind. He hasn't known her very long, and honestly, most of the time he's known her has been in a pretty antagonistic relationship where they've been fighting with each other, and he's been mad at her for not telling him the truth. So like, I don't care that he left. Like that's where the movie breaks for me as well. That's why the end doesn't really work. I agree with you that it finally starts to think about its own rules, but the emotional through line of it is garbage.
Yeah, they almost needed a sex scene where she could take it. Know what I'm saying?
That's not what I'm saying, but yeah. They just needed to do something. If they wanted us to care about that ending, they needed to have like the memories like flood back to him or something, you know? And him be like, oh my God, I remember all of our times together, and I do care about you so much. And so then you would like buy that he makes this like great sacrifice and says, I will leave so that you can be okay. And I don't mind that you're with this other guy because at least you're happy. But like the movie doesn't give us that.
Yeah, like even as simple as when they're in the hospital and he's like sort of, has his powers back, but not really, so he can kind of get damaged. And let's just say one of the bad guys smokes him in the head with like a pole, and then all of a sudden you see that flash montage, and you see them in like Victorian wear, and then you see them together on like the Sphinx, and then you see them together like flying, just doing this like quick mishmash of like just montage.
Why doesn't the movie do that?
And then it zooms out back to him, and he's like shakes it off. He's like, now I remember everything. And I know that sounds so stupid and silly, but again, that's kind of in line with the first half of the movie. So like whatever, that would work. And
no, it's literally what the movie needs at that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It makes sense because again, he is allowed to be hurt at that point. So I never thought of it that way, that because I know the ending didn't work for me in that sense, that it doesn't feel emotional really at all when he finally does fly off. Like the sacrifice really didn't hit, and you nailed it. That's exactly why. Yeah. Doesn't do the work.
Yeah. And I also want to quickly point out that as like main villains go, Eddie Marsan is terrible in this. And he's actually on record as saying he believes this is the worst acting performance he's ever given. Like he's not happy with this either. And he's normally an actor I quite like, but yeah, he's bad. He's bad. I mean, it's not that he's given much to do, but he's a very lame villain to rest your climax on.
Well, and especially your entry level, beginner franchise starter, and that's the guy. I know Marvel kind of gets in trouble, especially in the phase 1 of it all, that you just have like an evil Iron Man, and then you got an evil Thor, and then you got an evil Hulk. Like, I get it, but at least there is something exciting and emotionally there at the end. This one just feels so half-hearted in like every sense of the word. So, yeah.
If this was like, if this was Deadpool, they would have just left those two guys in the prison. Like they would have left that guy's head up the other guy's ass, and he would have become a supervillain called like Assad or something.
Yeah,
and it would have been like like a superpowered being with like two men in one.
Or the movie keeps hitting on that Hancock hates being called an asshole, but then at the end of it, you show these two show up as like a one person, like a 2 people villain, and then they are called asshole now. That's why he's so mad at them and wants to, kill them.
Can we talk about really quickly before we get into like whatever the next thing is? One of the strangest cameos in movie history. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I cannot remember. No.
So it's I don't even know if you would have clocked this, but in an early scene when we first meet Ray, he's pitching his like charity that he wants to get going, which is called like All Heart. It's where he wants to change the world for good. Ray's actually a pretty decent character, and it's well performed by Jason Bateman. Mm-hmm. He is this guy who's like really trying to do good things in the world, and he really does see. This is one thing I kind of liked about the movie is that he does see Hancock as an opportunity, but it's not entirely cynical. Like, he kind of immediately does also see the good in Hancock and really is trying to push him to do good things. It would have been very easy to play the PR guy as just a total scumbag who's only out for himself, and the movie doesn't do that. But in the first scene we meet him with, he is giving a presentation to like the board of some company. One of those board members is Akiva Goldsman, so like whatever. I saw him as like, oh, that hack son of a bitch, But the other one is Michael Mann, and I was just like, what? Michael Mann, director of Manhunter, Last of the Mohicans, The Insider, Heat, and I know at one time he was attached to direct this, and as we said, he did not, but he couldn't let it go apparently, and he has a cameo here in Hancock, and I don't think he's like someone known as like doing like a lot of acting work, but he has a couple lines in this, and I was just like, why is Michael Mann in this? That's just very, very weird.
That's funny. Yeah, I never would have saw that for sure.
Yeah.
Did you like when Charlize becomes a superhero and she becomes incredibly sexy and has black eyeliner and a plunging neckline?
Yeah, and also there's like no reason for her to be dressed like that.
No, not at all.
Like in character and story, why did she do that? Like she still wants to be like incognito, right? I mean, even like that's like the first break of the movie. Like I was talking about how that twist is when the movie starts. Like characters start being like morons. When they kiss, she grabs Hancock, and this is the big reveal, the gasp moment, as you call it in the theater. Throws him through. You said the wall, but she throws him through like 3 walls. The fridge ends up like on the outside of the house, and then she like goes up to him and she runs up to Hancock after doing that and says, if Ray finds out about my powers, you're dead. It's like, you you just threw him through the house.
Yeah.
Like, why did you do that? Like, wasn't there like, first of all, I don't think you need to reveal your powers to him. So like, you brought this on yourself. Yeah, I don't know. It's just so dumb. It's just so dumb. Like, the movie is just like not thinking these things through at all, or it is. It's just like whatever. They won't care because we're giving them fun Will Smith flying scenes. I don't know.
Yeah. So before we started recording the podcast here, Trev had texted me that he had a copyrighted rewrite of the film. So Trev, take it away.
That's right, Chris. I know you love when Trev rewrites the movies, rewrites the movies, rewrites the movies, rewrites the movies. So bear with me here. I was just thinking about this, and I've kind of alluded to some of this before, but I was trying to think, like, well, what would I do if you gave me the script in the form we have here in the movie and asked me to improve it? And I was just saying how I feel like the emotional beats of the climax don't land for me. They all land with a thud. And I was trying to think, well, how can I fix that? How can I make the ending, move me and make me feel something? But also, how can I address my other main critique, which is my problem with Charlize Theron's character? The idea of this woman who has incredible powers and is not using them to do anything in the world, right? So I was thinking, what if you still have the reveal, which we're not crazy about, but the difference here is that, as I mentioned earlier, I think earlier in the film, you have Will Smith strike up a friendship with a fellow inmate at prison while he's still in prison, and you kind of let that be the character who maybe it's even a criminal he put away in the past, and it's his cellmate now. And at first they're very, very apprehensive. They don't like each other. But that cellmate starts to actually kind of like Hancock. Hancock starts to like him. And that starts the ball rolling into Hancock regaining his humanity. Then you have the reveal. He finds out that Mary is like another one of him. And he, in finding out the story, he does actually confront her and say, why have you not been using your powers? We both can do this. I've obviously wasted mine. I became a drunk. I became a mess. I was like hurting the city. Why weren't you out there cleaning up after me? Why weren't you doing the good thing? And you can see his words are actually getting to her, and that's what really frustrates her. She's getting like annoyed, and she pushes him away even more. And she's like, she doesn't want to hear it. She's like, look, it's too painful to always go through this. I can't do that. And so now he's like very, very confused. Doesn't know what to do. And he goes back, and at this point she actually tells him the thing, right? It's not, in my version, it wouldn't be a surprise. It wouldn't be a reveal. She tells him, look, if we're together too long, we will start to like lose our powers. So I would then have him fly back to prison and talk to his friend. He flies back and goes back into prison, which would just be kind of a funny joke in itself, I think. Yeah. And he goes back and talks to the inmate he left behind. And as he's talking, you see the bad guys, the criminals that we're going to have later in the climax, overhearing this. And so now they actually know. They know that if him and this woman are together, he will lose his powers. So now I'm fixing another problem with the script. Because then you build to a climax where this trio escapes, and they engineer a scenario that brings Hancock and Mary back together. And they take advantage of that to gravely wound both of them. And here's where I would lead. And now keep in mind, this is why Hollywood does not use me, because I'm not about to pitch an end for a multi-million-dollar tentpole, fun PG-13 summer movie. I'm going to pitch the Trevor Snyder version of this, which is what I would like to see. We get the same idea. They have both been gravely wounded. She is actually on the bed flatlining. And he is wounded, and he remembers something she said. And you flash back, and he remembers her saying, as long as the two of us are on the earth and we're close together, we will lose our powers. And so he actually, it can be like some kind of great sacrifice or whatever. Maybe the villain, because we set him up as a bomber before, right? That same bomber, the guy that Eddie Marsan plays, maybe he's brought a bomb again. And he's going to set it off. And Hancock uses his last bit of energy to grab this guy, fly up into space with him, and allow himself to be blown up with that guy on the bomb, thus killing himself. And the thing is, once Hancock dies, he is no longer on Earth. He is not her secondary member anymore. And his death causes her powers to come back. And suddenly we see the heart monitor beep again, and she is revived. And his sacrifice inspires her to now actually embrace being a hero. And the movie ends with her seeing her now, and she's still with Ray, and they have Aaron, they're living together happily, but they're at dinner together. She sees something on the news, and she's like, okay, I have to go take care of some business. And she goes off, and she is now the hero the city needs. That is how I would rewrite this, because I think that would actually be an ending that means something.
I might cut this, so hold on. Would you title that Hand Clam?
Oh my good God. You know what? I know right now, Chris, you're tempted to edit that out because you're thinking like, I don't know if I want to leave it, but you have to leave that in, buddy. I want the world to hear. I came up with this beautiful emotional ending, and you had to come in and sully it with your filth.
That's why I'm here, baby. No, but in all seriousness, I think that does really work. I mean, obviously way better. Again, for a franchise starter with Will Smith, I don't know if he's going to sign on for that. Fair enough. But at this point, you have a different actor probably in your version.
Well, to be fair, he signed on for I Am Legend, which he dies at the end and apparently they're doing a sequel to that. So I guess, you know, yeah.
No one's ever really gone.
It's all right, because no one's ever really gone. 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 No one's ever really gone.
But that would be the fun twist of this, right? You go see the movie thinking, this is the starter of a Will Smith like franchise, and you go, oh no, the next movie is all about like Charlize Theron's character, you know.
Just like when people heard that a Furiosa movie was going to be made, and everybody was super excited, and then they said, never mind, we're not going to have Charlize Theron in it.
Yeah, well, people should have been listening from the beginning when they said it'd be a prequel, so I have no sympathy for these people.
Well, Trev, would your version have that horrible mid-credit scene starring Mike Epps?
Oh, God. Can we talk about this mid-credit scene?
Of course.
We mentioned earlier how this movie came out in 2008, like in between Iron Man and Dark Knight, and about that interesting like historical placement of this as like a big superhero movie right at the beginning of the superhero wave. And one thing that obviously happened with the MCU is the MCU really paved the way for people to realize how to utilize mid and post-credit scenes. Mm-hmm. That clearly was not the case yet.
No.
Because this movie does not know why you bother with a mid-credit scene. Because this movie has a just absolutely pointless mid-credit scene where, you know, you've already established that Hancock has moved to New York. He's a hero in New York now instead of L.A. We get it. That's the end of the movie, right? It's fine. He's also somehow defaced the moon and put Ray's All Heart logo on the moon for him as a gift. I don't understand how that works. Whatever. But then you go to the credits and you think like, okay, you're probably, I'm sure, teenage Chris or whatever was, done stuffing your face with the popcorn or poutine, whatever the case, whatever you guys eat in the theater in Canada. And you were walking out and suddenly this scene comes on. And at this point, you're probably weren't sure, what a scene, like in the credits, what's going on? And they're like, well, we got to stay. I'm sure it's something important. No, it's just Mike Epps is like some guy, like some crook that's taken a woman hostage. And he calls Will Smith an asshole, and we're supposed to go like, yeah, that's right. Hancock hates being called an asshole, and that's it. I'm like, well, wait, why was that there? If you wanted it there, why wasn't it just the last scene of the movie? Why is it in the credits? Yeah, it was so strange, right? Like that. It maybe it just felt strange because we're so used to those scenes actually having like a level of some kind of importance to them, or genuinely being like a funny little tag. And this was not that. It was just like that was. Why did I sit through and wait for that?
Yeah, I think it definitely has a lot to do with our 12 to 15 years worth of muscle memory at that point. Mm-hmm. Because it was totally pointless. And you're right. Put it at the last scene of the movie, and it kind of works as the last scene of the movie, right before credits. But instead, you got to do the cliched CGI fly through the city, right? I mean, yeah, that was typical in early to late. I guess all the 2000 movies, they did that. But, very pointless, very pointless. But, Trev, there has been talk of sequels to this one, really since the release, all the way up to really 2020, actually. And I know we're talking about it on this podcast, and I think it might be on hold even longer because of the incident. But... for a long time, there was talk of it. Back in August of 2009, Columbia hired Adam Fierro and Glenn Mazzara, most famous at the time for The Shield. And then Glenn Mazzara went on to make some Walking Dead, I believe he went to.
Yeah, he was a showrunner for a few years of that, yeah.
So they were hired to write the sequel, and they were going to bring all the stars back. All three were signed to come back, and Charlize Theron actually is on record saying that she was game and ready to go. And did you see
Peter Berg said they were going to have like another character show up with their powers? There was going to be like a reveal of a third. Yeah.
It's I don't know if it's a shame it didn't happen. I wonder what could have been done with the benefit of hindsight and the benefit of living truly within the MCU at this point, and in the world of Deadpool. So I'm not sure. It's weird because the movie's such a mishmash of tones. Where does the sequel go? Does the sequel almost has to be just a regular superhero movie at this point, right? Like, that's kind of where it leaves.
Yeah, you would think. It's almost like you would have to... The only way a sequel would even be vaguely interesting is if you really found some like powerhouse actor to be that third and introduce them as like a completely different kind of character that we don't expect to see. And it's like this idea that they're so powerful that Hancock can't take him on by himself. He needs Mary's help. And now you're adding this like idea like, well, they have to work together, but the problem is whenever they work together, they start to lose their powers, right? Like that's the only thing a sequel could really be, I think.
Yeah. But it can't really be funny and goofy. It just can't. And
this movie wasn't very funny or goofy either, so that's fine.
That's true, but it just kind of that was always the conceit, right? The conceit was this alcoholic, depressed superhero, and I think again it goes back.
You're right. You've solved the premise and the hook of this movie already. That's been resolved. It's done. So
yeah, now we just have to watch guy in leather suit fight bad guy, and as somewhat interesting or of the pieces of Hancock, I just don't know where the hell it could go with the sequel, and I guess neither does Hollywood because it was never made. So I guess they're as stumped as we are as some dumb podcast hosts. So.
Yeah, this is one of those ones like you said that they refuse to just admit it's not happening. Like Berg or somebody will keep kind of bringing it up and be like, no, we're still thinking about it. And, as recently as 2020, Charlize Theron is still saying we haven't really made a lot of progress, but could still happen. I'd still be down for it. But I would say the chances of a sequel to Hancock probably ended once Will Smith cocked his hand back and slapped it across Chris Rock's face.
All right, that leads into a couple more that I got. I just got to get them out, okay? I just got to get them out.
Okay, go ahead. I know you've been waiting with bated breath. Go ahead.
Okay. So I went through Will Smith's filmography, and I already dropped some of these puns already, but I did most of his filmography, honestly. So I feel pretty good about that. So a couple ones here: Enemy of the Academy, Wild Wild Will, I Rock, Shout Tale, The Pursuit of Slappiness, I Am No Longer Legend, Seven Palms, Concussion. I didn't change that one because it was hilarious. Yeah. Career Suicide Squad, Al Handon. That might be the dumbest one. And then King Bitchard, because he bitch slapped Chris Rock.
No Legend of Slapper Vance.
I forgot he did that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, those are my puns. I just need to get them out of my system, and we're good. I'll never make a Will Smith joke again. Honestly, I think I'm done for a long, long time.
Yeah. So final thoughts. Forgettable. Right. This really is the kind of one where once you press stop on this record, and obviously we post the episode and everything, this is just gonna evaporate from my mind. Unfortunately, it's not bad enough to be interesting, and definitely not good enough to be for us to advocate for and fight for. It really is just one of those that's really a movie of missed opportunity because they had two decent ideas and unfortunately tried to put those two ideas into a blender and it just didn't work.
Mm-hmm. And I agree completely. I may have enjoyed the first half a little bit more than you, but overall, yeah, my same thoughts as I had 14 years ago when this came out. So.
Yeah. And the problem is the enjoyable stuff is the first half, right? If the first half was kind of shaky and the second half was bad, that'd be fine. But it always sucks when the second half is where you're like, uh-oh, when it all falls apart in the end, then you don't care to revisit it, I think.
100%.
Yeah.
So that'll do it for Hancock. Next episode, we are looking at Sky High from 2005, continuing in our April Showers Brings April Powers theme month. So I've never seen Sky High. I worked at the movie theater when that was out, though. And I just have memory of maybe clips of it when I was doing theater checks. But that's
okay. I just see this is when I didn't know this was a first time watch for you.
Yeah.
This is actually the exact same scenario almost. That it's a first-time watch for you, which I didn't know, and also it's a movie that I have seen, but not in a very, very long time. Right. So I have certain memories of it, but this is it's very, very exciting for me to revisit it. Yeah.
Well,
Will?
No. Well.
Will?
No.
Will Smith. That's what we've been talking about. Yeah, I know.
Right. Okay. Well, Will Smith. Did that bit just work for us and not our audience?
Probably. As long as we're amusing ourselves. You know what? We're the only ones listening too, so who cares?
All right. Keep up with us on all the socials at F2FPod. That's at F2, the number 2FPod. Like us there, like us everywhere. Also, rate, review, whatever you do. A star rating would be awesome. I love looking at those reviews, and some of them we ignore. So whatever. Actually, hold on. There's a reason why I've said a lot of puns. We had a bad review once and said they don't like our puns. Well, you know what? Fuck you. We don't want you here anyway. All right, you're not part of our tribe. And what I'm going to say is, join the tribe and hit that subscribe. That's the people we want. We want punny people. We want well-adjusted people. And
well-adjusted people?
Oh my god. Anyways, yes, that's the podcast.
Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth!
Will Smith just smacked the shit out of me. Wow. Greatest night in the history of television.